Hello, I'm Nathan J. DePerry. This is the Buddy and Romeo Alone for the Holidays audiobook author commentary. For episode 1, I'm going to go over the front and back covers, which have gone through a couple different iterations. This episode will be available for free to the public, and from here on out, the interior of the book will be exclusive to those who pre-ordered the book and also for paid subscribers of the Substack. If you happen to enjoy this episode, you're welcome to join us on Substack as paid subscribers, and then you'll receive subsequent episodes. When you hear this sound during the audio commentary, that means it is time to turn the page, which was the sound that we would hear in the 1980s with our books on tape. The sound you just heard is actually from the classic Fisher-Price Chatterphone. The copy or the version that I have here is copyrighted 1986. The original book cover was created in the summer of 2020 in the midst of the quarantine, and it seemed hilarious to have the title Alone for the Holidays and two guys stuck in their apartment and just no furniture, nothing like that. Just barren walls and a floor that was cluttered with objects pertaining to calendar holidays. It all stopped being funny when the quarantine dragged on and it was clear that we would all be spending the holidays alone. Flash forward to 2022, end of 2022, when I started thinking about the book again. The Substack started to get a following when it launched in early 2023, and by the end of 2023, I really started to think like this book should actually become a reality. For all of that time, that original 2020 cover was the cover. It was digital. It was, I thought, representative of how the characters typically appeared in color, which was very seldom, but it was typically like a clean digital coloration. In 2025, I really started to feel that cover didn't work. I wanted the cover to be hand-painted and have just more of a sense of existence in the real world. If it was going to be a book as opposed to just staying on a hard drive, then I wanted the front cover, the illustration, to be tactile as well. A lot of the work that I'd been doing in recent years played around with the materials more. For so many years, especially in the beginning of my professional career, I felt as if I was bound to a rhythm and a routine of how images could be made and should be made if they're coming from me. It's almost as if I established my own inner house style or something that I didn't feel I could deviate away from. And as a child, I played with color forms, action figures during the day for sure, but at night I would bring a set of color forms to bed. It would be Ninja Turtles or DuckTales or something. If you weren't around in the 80s, I don't know if they were around in the 90s or 70s or whatever else. I'm not sure of the history of the company, but color forms were basically a cardboard glossy backdrop, and you had these vinyl stickers of characters and objects, and it essentially was a flat play set. I loved those things, and the way I'm making illustrations the last couple of years, it's bringing that into the picture. I'm enjoying the cast shadows. Some of this is inspired by Emma Yarlett, who is a phenomenal British author-illustrator, one of my favorites. And looking at her children's books really inspired me to rediscover my own sense of play. From a practical standpoint, this also gives me the ability to not only construct the images in pieces and assemble them later, because I don't have the same amount of time in my schedule to just sit for 40 hours and craft an image. It's really done in short spurts. So to do small pieces and then put them together after, it's just more practical. From a digital standpoint, if I were working in Photoshop, I would have layers in the image, and I'd be able to move those layers around. As I soon realized, this would be an essential element to designing both book covers, the back and the front cover. The ability to pick an element up and reposition it on the page, which you could do so easily digitally. But if this was all one flat painting, I would have no way of doing that. And I would either be doing digital cleanup or repositioning or just repainting. The mountain on the front cover, this mountain cliff, I actually built a little mock-up of this using Play-Doh and sketched off of that. So it was a loose, rough little mold, but it gave me enough of an idea of how this construction would work. And I glanced at a photo or several photos of rock cliffs, but didn't want to be bound to those. So I knew I wanted this almost great wave-inspired cliff coming in off the side, and the characters careening over the side of it. Let me back up for a second, because how did we get here? When I went to hand paint the 2020 cover, I was so excited that it was working until I saw it all put together. It's another liability for this process, actually. Like, one of the drawbacks is you craft it in stages and in pieces, and you might go to a lot of trouble and through a lot of work only to find out that it doesn't work at the end. And that's what happened on the hand-painted version of the 2020 cover. I did it in the August of 2025, July to August, and August 19th, Julie and I looked at it, and it was just hideous. There was no composition, no hierarchy, no charm, no appeal, and I felt like I wasn't connecting with the characters. Like, they were lost amongst this sea of objects. I got really carried away with adding more objects, way more than what was there in 2020, and it was lost. So I went back to the sketchbook, and the first thing I drew was Buddy reading Romeo a bedtime story by the fire, cozy in the living room, but it was like a scary story or something. So it was like Romeo was scared. I didn't want to do another cuddle up on the couch book cover. It's actually interesting because the second book in the My Guardian Grandpa series, the cover that I spent the most amount of time on and was very close to bringing to final was Judy and Levi and Grandma on the couch watching old movies from a reel projector, and I abandoned that cover and instead opted for the three of them on a bicycle. So it's kind of interesting that was the first place I went, them on the couch in the living room, and what we end up with is an image of them in profile, like on a bike, actually at the exact same angle, careening downward. Speaking of My Guardian Grandpa, that was the book cover out of the four of them that I was the least happy with and remain the least happy with. This, in some ways, felt like a revisitation of that and like a second chance, like getting it right. This was the very next option. Like, as soon as I saw them in the living room, I knew it didn't make sense either because they don't have furniture. So seeing them cozy in a living room and a fireplace, like, that isn't Buddy and Romeo. What is Buddy and Romeo is disaster and them being on this ridiculous tandem together. It would also felt very much like Calvin and Hobbes, which has greatly influenced my illustration work and my comic strips since I was a kid. So the idea that you have them going straight over the cliff. Julie suggested shackling or she didn't necessarily say shackle the wagon, but putting the wagon on the back and go full on Santa's sleigh with this. I was really trying not to tie it to any one holiday in particular, and I think that's where I kind of got myself into trouble in the 2020 version of the cover, where there were just so many objects. Actually, to be honest, the 2020 version was way more organized because there were less objects. The objects really started to get out of control in early to mid 2025. There was just too much. So it's like the title itself suggests Christmas, really. Like, it's the idea of home for the holidays, and here it's alone. People are going to think of Christmas whether I like it or not, whether I intend for them to or not. So the idea of Santa on his sleigh here, and she was very insistent, like Romeo should have the red nose and the antlers. I think it's funny. We still get to see the characters in their costumes, because I was worried if we put them outside in the snow. I didn't want to put them in winter coats, which, like, it's fine if they're out in the cold because that's emblematic. It also, to me, feels very Starry Night-esque, with the cypress tree to the left and the sleepy, cozy town below. I don't, for a moment, want to make light of that painting, as it is a tragic portrait of a man in grappling with profound sadness and loneliness. I'm kind of sorry that I brought it up, but there are these homages to works of art and artists that I admire, and hopefully presented in a new, fresh way. In the first version of this book that was actually put into print, the cover was painted at a ratio size for 8.25 by 11. And when I finally got the book to proof it, and I'm looking at it right now, it's bigger than I thought it would be. I thought this would be a comfortable size, and I think that the cover looks wonderful at this scale. But the comics themselves, they feel too large. To Julie's point, she had envisioned the book as smaller, cozier, more portable, something that you could take with you, which I like that irony where Buddy and Romeo aren't accepted into anyone's homes and into anyone's lives. And here it's like, through this book, they are able to do just that. So when the decision was made very quickly during the proofing process to revert back to the original plan, which was 6 by 9 back in 2020, when I went to reformat and redesign the cover, I realized that the proportions no longer matched, and I was going to be losing too much of the bottom image and squeezing the typography in so that it conflicted with the tandem bike. So this is where I really felt a great sense of relief that I had constructed this painting in the way that I did, which is in elements. Buddy and Romeo and the tandem are all two pieces, actually. When you get the cover, when you get the book, you'll be able to see that there's a little splice, a little cut on the handcuffs. That was kind of inadvertent, but I just decided to leave it. So the wagon and the handcuff is one piece. Buddy and Romeo and the tandem are all another piece. The hat is one piece. The bag it's actually a trash bag. They're not toys. It's literally intended to be a bag of trash that they're just hauling away. They're probably on their way to the dump in the middle of the night. Remember the dump? The cliff, that's its own piece. I was very glad about that because then I could lift these pieces up and move them around. I moved the cliff further to the left. I reconfigured all the other movable pieces. And then I decided to paint more of the bottom of the little town or the village and more on the right. Because before, the image just kind of ended right at the second floor windows on the blue house at the center on the bottom. So I extended down, got to see a little bit more of like the lawn and the shrubs and the driveways. And actually, I bumped the tree line down so that the typography would fit a little bit better. One other thing, or a couple other things that I want to say about this front cover. If you look closely at the tandem and the wagon and Buddy and Romeo against the moon, you're actually going to see the cast shadows of the paper cutout, but also like some hovering white. I decided not to digitally clean up some of the bigger areas of paper that I decided to preserve. If you look between Romeo's body and his two shoes, there's still white paper there that I just decided I was going to leave in because I didn't want to apologize for the fact that I used scissors and tape and cut this thing out and put it together. I think that in 2025, the illustration field has changed dramatically with AI. And now I feel like it's very important that artists are trying to prove that they made the work and that it was done by hand. It's kind of like in math class all those years when you were told, show your work, show your work. For me, this is a way of showing my work. Aside from the typography, which is digital, the only other digital element that is on the cover are the Ben-Day dots, which is a dot system that Real Buddy actually taught me about and how to do circa 2009, which is actually when, in my mind, this series takes place, because that's the year the two of us were actually 24, 25, and when we were bachelors, like living this ridiculous life. Not this ridiculous. I mean, oh my gosh, these two are ridiculous. We were responsible citizens and not nearly so pathetic. But this is the comedic, fictitious version. The other element that is digital, all the snowflakes, those were added in. That is actually a photograph of coffee grounds. From 2019, Julie and I do a greeting card series called Coffee Lovers Christmas, and in 2019, when we were, actually it could be from 2018, which is the year the comic strip ended. So Buddy and Romeo left the newspaper in November 2018. I think I took 2 or 3 weeks off and then went full on painting Coffee Lovers Christmas, which was a series that Julie and I had been talking about and designing and planning for 6 years at that point. We got that idea in 2012. Yeah, it seems a little poetic that that they're here on the cover. Let's flip to the back cover. The original plan for the back cover was to have an illustration of Buddy and Romeo in a state of peril. Romeo would be holding onto an anvil, screaming at the top of his voice, falling through the air, and beneath him, Buddy would be swinging in on a trapeze in an ill-fated attempt to catch him. This was actually a drawing that I sent out as a promotional Christmas card. I think it was either in 2017 or 2018. 2018 would be an interesting choice, like upon cancellation. But typically I would send these images out to existing clients or prospective clients to market the work. The original iteration of this was, as a Christmas card, it was painted in watercolor, not very well, I might add, but for the cover, I thought that it would be digital. And when I made the change from digital to hand painted in 2025 for the covers, I didn't like the results. If I wasn't going to keep it. So, it got scrapped. Just as the previous iteration of the front cover survives and made it to the interior of the book, the former back cover of the anvil and the trapeze, that also finds its way into the interior of the book towards the end. I won't say where, I won't say why, but both of those images are preserved as their ink version. I had really toyed with the idea of approaching artists that I admire to ask for quotes on the back of the book, as authors tend to do. I didn't want to do that, but I knew that I needed something on the back in terms of copy, but quotes weren't going to be it. I also didn't want to do the sort of snide quotes that I used to market the comic strip the first time, which I think are really funny, but like on the back of a book, I didn't want the message to be like, this book is like, don't buy this book. Like, I didn't want people to be making fun of the book on the book's cover. So instead I opted for spoilers, which I thought, and I hope, is an amusing, surprising way of providing a little bit of a synopsis here. Spoilers for Buddy and Romeo Alone for the Holidays. This book offers a glimpse into a year in the lives of Buddy and Romeo as they attempt to find female companionship. They will never learn, always lose, and in the end, neither guy gets the girl. They will, however, always have their mother's love. Like it or not, Buddy and Romeo will be friends and roommates forever. On the back here, where you see all these objects and the furnace and the flames, these once populated the apartment on the front cover. Buddy and Romeo were in the midst of it, and I think it would have worked okay if the background were just white, but there was too much going on. The background was muddy. There were too many different contrast and value conflicts that some objects would pop out really well against that background. Some of them would be absorbed back. It was just sensory overload, and there was no sense of hierarchy. Here in this context, I think that we're able to navigate and maneuver around the objects. I think there's a nice congruency to them, and you can see them a little bit more. Sort of how it's radial too. Like this whole back cover is designed in a circle. So it's like you begin in one place and then you travel around and you end back at your starting point and you loop through it again. My hope is that each time you reach the back cover, you, maybe not right away, but you close it, you reopen it, and you start it again. And they're just with you for the calendar year. And you actually become an active participant in their repeated mistake making and their misery, and just perpetuating that they're never going to find what they're looking for. Yeah, that's the hope. I think it's pretty obvious what the objects are on the back cover, but just in case, we've got a coffee pot in the upper left on a charcoal grill. The charcoal grill is 4th of July, and the coffee pot is National Coffee Day. They're about to have a fire, a glass explosion, all of these things. Such a terrible idea. Hanging off of the grill, there is, I don't know, one of those like little forks. It looks like there are actually 3 tines here. I'm just noticing that. There are only 2. One of those little dark, what looks like a tine in the middle is actually a shadow. I guess that's just something I'm going to live with. I didn't notice that until just now. Oh well. Romeo's bow tie is also dangling from the grill. I don't know that this represents a specific holiday per se, but I mean, I guess any of the holidays where you might dress up, maybe New Year's Eve. I don't know. I never dressed up. I like to stay home on New Year's, but I just thought it was a funny way of showing like Romeo was there. There's another chance at a fire and a disaster. I guess height-wise too, Romeo's bow tie being short, and then you have this long, tall, thin grill item, that ends up indicating Buddy. The golf club below, that indicates Father's Day. Burnt turkey, burnt to a crisp, Thanksgiving. You see mouse traps around it with 3-leaf clovers. They're not even 4-leaf. Like they can't even get that right. There's no luck. Empty traps. They're looking to catch something. You know what they're going to catch. They're trying to catch a leprechaun, but that's not how it's going to work out. They're Easter eggs peppered throughout the back cover. There's a dollar bill with a bite taken out of it. I don't want to spoil that one, actually. Read the book. You'll find out why that's there. There's a sheet of paper that says, "To Mom, love Buddy," and then there are handprints on it. It's up to you to decide how old the person who made these handprints were. It might not necessarily be the handprints of a child. Get Mom what she really wants. Your handprints when you're 24 years old. There are weight plates. It looks like they could be They could be 35s or 25s and a 10 or a 5 or something, but they're weight plates with cookies on them. The weight plates are for New Year's Eve or New Year's Day. It's a New Year's resolution. And then there are cookies on top of them with milk beside the plate for Christmas. So the idea of the cookies on top of the weight plate means this New Year's resolution will be broken and the temptation of the sugar and the treats is still there. There are a dozen eggs here, colored for Easter, and paper Valentine hearts adjacent to that. There's a broken egg right up above it too, which helps us to realize that these two idiots didn't even hard boil the eggs before they colored them. So that won't cause any problems since they're all over the floor. There's a jack-o'-lantern here, and for some reason, they have carved a broken heart in it. The crack in the heart is like a lightning bolt there, so like showing their pain. Nothing says joyous holiday or like fun holiday, like broadcasting how miserable you are. To the right, as we make our way to the right side of the cover, there's a pile of mail. You're welcome to interpret these as bills or as letters that they mean to send out to some ladies. If they're bills, they're unpaid. Like they won't be paid because they're on fire. I don't know if the fire is intentional or if it's accidental and this is going to upset them. There are a couple cartoons about unpaid bills in the Halloween chapter, and there are cartoons about sending out Christmas cards and Christmas greetings and Valentine's greetings and all this mail that goes out that ultimately is unanswered. So yeah, there it goes, up in flames. Up above that, we've got their stockings hung with care over the open flame on the furnace. They're hung with candy canes and another disaster waiting to happen. You see the smoke pouring out of the radiator, and there is a photograph of Buddy on the radiator in his gold frame. Actually, if you move back up, since it's a radial composition, we move up through the text and up at the top of the Christmas tree, which I skipped over. The Christmas tree is dead, by the way. It's been there for too long, dried out, just as they've been in their apartment too long and are drying out. Romeo is up at the top. I'd have to think that he decided he should be the one at the top of the tree, the star of the tree, but there's no chance that he could have put that up there himself. If he had climbed up there, certainly the dry tree would have fallen over. So in that regard, it's sweet, it's funny, it's endearing that the only way that Romeo could have gotten that picture of himself up at the top of the tree is if Buddy picked him up to help him get it there. So you can just imagine that moment between these two morons that as they fight and they clobber each other and they bicker and they get mad at each other, like there is still that like kind of warm sweetness. I mentioned Calvin and Hobbes on the front cover. Certainly SpongeBob and Patrick were also highly influential. But however you interpret the characters and relate to the characters, I dearly hope that you enjoy the contents of this book. It has been 10 years in the making, and I am very gratified to see it in front of me in one collection in actual paper and glorious color and ink. This has been the Buddy and Romeo Alone for the Holidays audiobook author commentary. Don't miss our next pathetic chapter. I'm Nathan J. DePerry. Thank you for listening.